MBS will be at the White House by this time tomorrow. We're going to be listening in on a bilateral lunch that will presumably include some press. How are you viewing the stakes surrounding this visit, and what is in it for the United States?
Thanks for having me on. The stakes are high, and a great deal is in it for the United States. We were talking about four-dimensional chess on the Epstein case domestically a moment ago. It's the same in the Middle East. While Saudi Arabia is a hugely important country in the region and for U.S. relations, this is even bigger than Saudi Arabia. It's locking in a regional security, trade, and diplomatic coalition that will build on the defeat first of Daesh, the Islamic State, about 7 years ago, and now the defeat of Iran, its proxy empire over the past 2 years, to allow the region finally to enjoy peace, prosperity, political independence, and allow the United States slowly to back out of the region. So lots at stake. The Saudis, like the Israelis, like the Turks, like a couple of other countries, are central to it. Trump is pushing forward on all of these fronts.
And what does Saudi Arabia get out of this visit, Ambassador?
First of all, acknowledgement. This is almost a state visit, although technically the crown prince is the crown prince, not the king. The king is still there. But he's also getting to build on the Biden fist bump forgiveness for the Khashoggi case. But more importantly, he needs economic coordination. He needs U.S. investment. He has promised $600 billion in Saudi investment in the U.S., and that's a good deal for Saudi Arabia, given the way our economy is cooking. But also, he wants progress on a pathway, that's the word we're using now, to a Palestinian state. That is a requirement before the Abraham Accords. He wants a nuclear accord. He wants a deal like we just gave to the state of Qatar, that is an executive order stipulating that any attack on Saudi Arabia or attack on its territorial integrity would be seen as an attack on the United States. That's what the Qataris just got. The Saudis will want that too. They will probably get something like it.
They'll probably get something like it. How about F-35 fighter jets?
I think that there'll have to be more progress on the Abraham Accords and more assuaging of the Israelis. As Wendy said, the Israeli military advantage is a critical part of our relationship with Israel and the whole region. But, for example, the Israelis use a lot of F-16s. Other countries in the region have F-16s. There are ways to work this, but it is sensitive and it's delicate.
When the president was in Riyadh in May, Ambassador, he said, talking about MBS, remember there was this big love fest. The president brought a number of executives with him from the United States, and he said, I like him a lot. I like him too much. What do you think he meant by that?
It's a riff on how you hear a lot of people in the Middle East who are native Arab speakers use very. We hear this all the time, and Trump along the way has picked it up and was using it back. But what he means is, this is my guy.
You know, he had the new president of Syria with him in the Oval Office quite recently, Ambassador, and that raised a lot of eyebrows. It's not something that we would have even considered a couple of months ago, as this was an individual involved in a Syrian a branch of al-Qaeda. How does that inform this meeting tomorrow?
Very much, because Syria is another critical piece, and here Trump has, by embracing, literally, al-Shara, formerly al-Julani, he's signaling how important Syria and Syrian involvement in this growing region-wide coalition is. I worked indirectly with al-Shara in the first Trump administration. He was fighting the real bad guys, the Islamic State, as early as 2016. Importantly, he was also fighting the Russians, Iran, and Assad. So he might have been a former terrorist, but he was a former terrorist who was effectively on our side. And we have honored that with his visit to the United States last week.
Does a global deal, to the extent that you're describing, involving potentially investment here, direct foreign investment, fighter jets, maybe even more than that, Ambassador, make the United States safer?
Yes. First of all, we've remained safe, all in all, since the 1940s by the same recipe, which is keep the global Eurasian island free of domination by a single power or a coalition that is hostile to us by working by, with, and through other countries, be it China and France and Britain in World War II, be it the NATO alliance, be it our friends in the Middle East. This allows us, with only 3% of our gross national product going to defense, to maintain a relatively stable world and that is secure and peaceful, not only for the American people, but for people all around the world. And that's a huge plus for global development, for economic trade, and everything else that's important to the American family.
You mentioned in the outset a Palestinian state and the extent to which Saudi Arabia would like to engage the U.S. on this. Where's Donald Trump's head here? He's spoken around this issue a bit, knowing, of course, what has transpired in Gaza. That's something that MBS is not very fond of, is he?
He's not fond of the terrible deprivations of the Gazan people, but he's very happy that one of Iran's major arms, Hamas, has been defeated. And he will be happy if President Trump continues pushing for, in the language we're using in our latest diplomatic statements, is a pathway to a Palestinian state. That's not a Palestinian state, and that has made the Israelis nervous, or at least some Israelis, but nonetheless, it's where Trump is now, and it will help him in these meetings tomorrow with the Crown Prince.
How long is that pathway? Is that beyond this president's tenure?
Well, we started 30 years ago with the Oslo Accords. And we came very close in 2000 in the view of then President Clinton. The fault was the Palestinian leader, Yasser Arafat, who could not take a deal when one was offered. The overall question is, are the Palestinians really, in their hearts, willing to accept a Jewish Israel as a neighbor? And that question has not been finally answered. We also need to know if all Israelis are willing to let the West Bank eventually be on a pathway to a separate state, given the claims of settlers. So there's several things at play here. But nonetheless, President Trump is pushing this, as all presidents have before him.